Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon everyone, and thank you all so much for taking the time to join us for this latest virtual networking event. I'm really happy to be welcoming two really good presenters for our two sessions today. Just to sort of introduce myself, so my name is Jason Pritchard. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the editor of eVTOL Insights, and I'd just like to introduce our first speaker. So it's Sergio Cecutta. I hope I pronounced that right, Sergio, and he's the founder and partner at SMG Consulting, an aerospace, defense, and automotive management consulting firm. He leads the strategy, project and program management, market analysis, and business development for a diverse client portfolio of worldwide companies. As a senior executive at multiple Fortune 200 companies, Sergio has been involved with the development and introduction of of products like the Airbus A380, the SmartView synthetic vision system, and the Gulfstream G500-600. He has also led the strategic due diligence of several merger and acquisition deals. So, Sergio, if you're able to put your camera on, that'd be great, and then I'll jump off myself, and we can begin the first presentation.
There you go. Perfect.
Excellent. Sergio, great to have you with us today. I'm really looking forward to what will be a great presentation. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I hope you guys see my slides. If you see anything in the background, that's a new Ferrari. Sorry, I'm a car guy. Yes, as I was talking at my table, I lead the practice for advanced air mobility at SMG Consulting. One of the things that we worked on is, and we work on every single day, is this Advanced Air Mobility Reality Index. So what happened? We started looking at the industry a few years ago, and what we see an industry that it's very crowded. Yes, for sure, there is some names that emerge over all the others. However, we want to, there's just a lot of different companies. And so one of the ideas with all of these different companies was, how do we try to figure out a little bit which companies we define it as real, which companies are going to be there at the end, making vehicles, producing vehicles. And so when we were looking, we saw some market needs, and we saw market needs for let's make it clear. How do I make it clear and understanding of all of these companies? How do we make it simple? Not something that it's complicated, not something that is too engineering driven. How do we make it uncluttered? How do we make it something that it's not too convoluted? And then how can we make something that's updated all the time? Because again, as I was jogging in my table, my dream is one day I wake up and there is no news, but that's not going to happen. And so we want to be always updated. And last but not least, something that's auctionable. My background is from big Fortune 200s. And one of the things that I live by is whoever has the most data wins. And so we very strongly feel that when it comes to anything, the market wanted something that wasn't someone's opinion, but was auctionable. And so we created this Advanced Air Mobility Reality Index. And the Advanced Air Mobility Reality Index assesses the industry entrants, so the OEMs in this case, but we will expand to other parts of the ecosystem, and their progress toward the delivery of a certified product at mass scale production. So what do we mean with this? It's very important that these aircraft are certified because a lot of people, especially people that are not in the industry or they don't know aerospace at all, they're asking me, are these airplanes going to be safe? Is the FAA going to certify them? And the answer is yes on both counts. And you know that if the regulatory authority don't certify these airplanes, we're not going to fly on them. And last but not least, all of the business plan of these companies foresee thousands of vehicles being produced. And so this is another piece that is very important. Are they going to be able to get there? So we created this index that is data-driven. There is no bias in any way. Whatever data comes in, it's filtered through specific formulas, specific weights, and a number comes out, and it's unbiased. We do not think that the time has yet come for a solution to emerge in this market as the preferred solution, nor is there a company that has risen to the heights of a Boeing and an Airbus yet. We wanted something that's easy to understand. It's one of the answers that you hear many times in aerospace, especially from engineers. And again, that's not a dig on engineers. I have a PhD in aero, but we want to make it easy to understand. We don't want to do the it depends. And last but not least is accessible and usable. It's something that people can use. It's a tool, not something that it's just there sitting pretty. So when it comes to the Advanced Air Mobility Reality Index, how is it calculated? So we have 5 buckets that we look at. The first one is the funding. The majority of the companies in this space are startups, and that is the importance of what's the funding. However, funding is also important for legacy companies, for the simple reason that if a legacy company really does not commit to the market, there's not going to be funding available. Now, we won't know how much is the R&D that goes in a specific project for a corporate entity, while we'll know the funding that goes into a startup. However, that's always important to know. The second piece is the team. And here we look at, is the team, does the team have aerospace experience? How much aerospace experience? Do they not have any aerospace experience? And the reason is we saw people coming from tech at times. However, we want to see the composition of the team. The next bucket is the technology readiness. So rather than looking at saying, what is the goodness of this vehicle? Is it going to be a good vehicle? Is it not going to be a good vehicle? We will talk about it later, about the fact that that's not where we want to get into, because no one has all the information unless you are the OEM. And so we want to look at technology readiness. And when we look at technology readiness, what's best than use mother NASA scale of TRL, technology readiness level. The next step is the certification progress. And this is very important because certification is, according to our understanding, one of the big hurdles here. And last but not least, production readiness. What the production readiness? Can they make 1? Can they make 100? Can they make 1,000? And so once we take all of these elements with specific weights, we put them in the blender and we let it go, this is the output. What you see is the June 2021 release. If you ever see a reality index that's not on our website, or it's not on Aviation Week AAM Advanced Air Mobility Report, little parenthesis, we are a partner of Aviation Week in their coverage of advanced air mobility, providing the Advanced Air Mobility Index funding, as well as expertise. So if you see the index on either of the website, that's great. If you don't, just look for the release because it changes all the time. And as an exclusive to the people that are here listening, there is going to be a new release coming out in July. And we'll leave it at that. In this new release, we had 2 new companies, Overair and Jaunt, from the Uber days. If you remember, there were some of the partners. As well as some movement around. And the other big addition that probably you can notice, not only the new vehicles, but a funding column. And we'll talk a little bit about funding and all the related items. So how do you read the rating? We go from 0 to 10, very simple. We've added a decimal point because OEM naturally cluster by milestones. Imagine first flight, and there everyone's there. Or a company that starts a certification project with the regulatory agency. So there is clustering of specific milestones. The closer you get to 10, 10 would be basically a company with a certified vehicle or family of vehicles that are produced in thousands of units and they're operating with different customers. As you can imagine, no one is a 10 today, and I don't foresee anyone being a 10 for another 4 to 5 years. And on the other side of the scale, anyone closer to the other side, it's really, we try not to go too low. This is not meant to be capturing the long tail of all the vehicles. This is meant only to capture the OEMs we think are more interesting, and it's interesting to know what they're doing. We don't want to cover everyone. And last but not least, basically this tail end could be OEMs that were interested in the market, but they really don't have their heart into it anymore, or they just want to wait. New for the July release is this bump chart. I love bump charts, and the colors, it's not because I wanted to put colors, it's because you guys can see easily and follow your preferred OEM. And next month there's going to be another column, but this is all the releases of the index: December, February, May, and June. And you can see a little bit how all the companies have moved around. As I mentioned, a new piece of the pie has been the funding. Funding is always interesting. Everyone has access to different sources, and so the numbers should be the same, but I would say they're similar. In this case, we have shaded all of the spec-related funding. But again, as people have asked me, when is the spec funding going to be accounted? And my answer is 1 minute after the ticker starts trading on the specific stock exchange. And right now, the only company that's traded is eHang. When it comes to specs, you guys know there is many different color of money. In this case, we compute pipe and cash held in trust minus the transaction cost. Just one word of interest for everyone: the cash held in trust may or may not go to the company. It's more than likely that they will, but there is no say of certainty. And you can read that, for example, in the Lilium deck. Anyway, as you can see, they're ordered by the bucket of how much money they've received. When it comes to the famous how much money does it take to certify, in the 800 to $1 billion, I will caution to the fact that it depends, unfortunately. It's the answer. And it depends on what? It depends on their supply chain strategy, and it depends on what vehicle they're trying to certify. If we move on, another tool that we've created is these advanced air mobility launch cities. Again, most of our tools, I always say, are born of a selfish need of, I'm trying to understand something, no one else has it, so why don't I create it, or we create it, I meant. And so in this case, what you see companies, cities, and years. So you are able to go to this map, zoom in, zoom out, you can link the map, and you see what cities, in what year they want to start their advanced air mobility services, as well as if there is an OEM, what OEM. In case of New York, for example, 2 OEMs. And last but not least, the difference between the little airplane, the GA versus the jet, is it is a city service, so UAM, or it is a regional service, so AAM. And you see in Europe clusters, you guys can zoom in, zoom out. Last but not least, the vehicles. I am very proud of our illustration with a very good friend in Australia. And in order to do the illustration, we need to know the size of all the vehicles. Many OEMs have been very economic with the data that they release. And so many times we try and do our own measurement. Sometimes the OEMs are extremely kind to provide us the data. However, the data is not public. And so that is when you will see a not announced yet tag. But in this case, I think the interesting part, not only I think it's an awesome illustration, not because we make it. If someone else made it, I would still think it's awesome, doesn't matter. But it kind of gives you an idea of how do they compare in size one to the other. And considering no one has seen them fly, and very few of us have seen them in person, I think it's interesting. Final thoughts. What we want to make sure, let's not confuse, what is it meant for? It meant to meet those market needs, to make it easy for a new user to the industry to understand it, and to be useful, usable, updated, quick glance for industry experts. What it is not meant to do is to evaluate the technical merits of their solution. I am a big believer that unless when OEMs goes completely open kimono, that in the US means they tell you everything about their vehicle, only they know how much, how good the solution is. And last but not least, we don't want to evaluate their business case. Again, we might be able to go into more detail once company go public, but until now, we do not have all the data. I appreciate you guys listening to me blab for how many minutes I've taken. If you want to reach me, these are all my contact information. Easiest way, just smg-consulting.com, AAM Reality Index.com. Thank you guys.
Awesome, Sergio. As always, really appreciate your work in this industry as well, and especially the AAM Reality Index. I know we've talked at length about the index only last week as well. We have got some questions and some very good ones actually. Probably won't be able to get through all of them, ladies and gentlemen. So it just with time and wise for today. But the question that's come through first, Sergio, is from Robin Brownsell, and he's asked, "Are you planning to count revenue or maybe orders placed?"
It's a good question. Right now, a lot of the orders are pre-orders, they're LOIs. That's the part where we have struggled a little bit if we want to count them or not. They're not actual solid order. Very few companies have order like that. I will give you an example. For example, UPS with Beta, they've actually placed deposits that are non-refundable. But it is an interesting idea, and we might implement that. So I appreciate the suggestion.
Perfect. Thanks ever so much for that, Sergio. And then we've got another question from my colleague Gary, and he said, "How do you rate an established aerospace player versus a startup? For example, Embraer's Eve and Boeing's Whisk versus an Archer or a Joby?"
So as far as the ratings, again, everyone is rated according to the same buckets, those 5 buckets, and in each buckets there is specific items, specific milestones. What I would say is the big difference between a startup and an established player is some of their capabilities. For example, for a Hyundai, you will see that even if they don't have a vehicle that flies, they're higher up, for the simple reason that their production capabilities, I think we can agree, are beyond compare with anything in the industry. And that is one of the reasons why we always placed Eve high, very high. It's because they have Embraer behind them. They know how to make hundreds of airplanes. They know what it means to stand up an aerospace supply chain. And last but not least, we also know they know how to service them everywhere in the world. And what we found, we've been very pleasantly, not surprised, but being confirmed, was the fact that all of the people that are ordering aircraft from Eve are mentioning the same thing. They have the Embraer might of production and service behind them. In the specific case of Whisk versus Boeing, in this case, Boeing is investing, it's giving manpower, but we don't know yet what that means aside from that. Is it Boeing going to give a production line? The involvement at that point, we don't know yet. So in that specific case, we don't know where the line starts and the other one ends. But again, the most important answer is it's a level playing field. It doesn't matter. It's a startup, it's Boeing, it's Airbus. Everyone needs to get rated the same way.
Thanks ever so much for that, Sergio. And then the final question I've got is from Frank Beschera. So apologies if I've got the pronunciation wrong on that one. And it's regarding the index buckets, Sergio. Are you seeing any one of these buckets holding back the advanced air mobility evolution?
I don't think that anything is holding back. I think we have some milestone flags that I think are very important. And I think as far as milestone coming, certification is a big deal. A lot of people ask us the question, do you believe in the dates from the OEMs? And the answer I can give is, while the dates are aggressive, there is nothing to disprove them. However, what we say all the time is that the end of next year is where the rubber meets the road. That's where we will know who's going to make it, who's not going to make it, or who's likely to, or is not likely to. And the other piece that I think is starting to have more and more interest is the production side of the house. We've seen some of these companies announce ramp-ups that have been unheard in aerospace since I have been alive on this planet, and probably even my parents. And so it's very interesting to see how are they coming up with their infrastructure to build all of these aircraft. And let's not forget the supply chain, because even if you can make 400 fuselages, if the avionics guy cannot give you the cockpit, it's not the same.
No, thanks ever so much for that, Sergio. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I really appreciate you giving the answer to those questions as well. Everyone, we're going to be going back to the networking once we've had our second presentation, so I'm sure Sergio will be able to answer any other questions that you might have as well. But Sergio, for now, thank you ever so much. If I could just ask you just to turn your camera off, and Mike DiCosola, if I could have you up on the stage as well with me, please. Excellent. Excellent, Mike. So really good to have you on with us, and really looking forward to your presentation. For those who aren't aware, so Mike is the CEO of Drone Industry Systems Corp. It is an autonomous airport/vertiport blockchain infrastructure IP and cybersecurity company, an inventor of over 15 conceptual utility process provisional patents, 2 domestic and 2 international non-provisional patents, over 40 drone IP brand logos, and 30 vertical major brand trademarks. So Mike's going to talk about their Vertiport-in-a-Box solution. So Mike, really looking forward to this. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. So let me log on real quick with the share screen here. Let's see here. And if you can you see this? Are you able to see that, Jason?
Sorry, I just had my mute. Can't see anything as yet, Mike. If we, there we go. I think we're all on it. Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I will turn my, there we go. Perfect. I will turn my camera off, Mike, but give us a shout if there's anything you need.
Okay, great. So Drone Industry Systems Corp, what we are is an intellectual property company that is looking at the infrastructure related to the vertiport industry on drone delivery. And so what we have done is we are building our system based on the blockchain cloud mobile application. And on the right side, there's different, as you can see, different types of brands that we have. These brands are vertical markets that will eventually, in our opinion, be used as, some are low-hanging fruit, some are not. But the market in this area right here is the drone delivery portion of it. So that brings us to the smart Vertiport-in-a-Box solution. It's a non-provisional domestic and international patent pending. And what it does is it allows us to take infrastructure that already exists and layer another infrastructure on top of it. This is an example of a departure, en route, and arrival with using machine learning, AI, and blockchain technology. So the smart if you can see the UAS, UAV, eVTOL, VTOL, rooftop and ground Vertiport-in-a-Box solution. It allows for the full integration of raw weather data into a blockchain validation, and basically it ledgers everything in data on raw form. This also allows us to create the cyber protection. By doing that, we are onboarding the APIs, the SDKs, and making sure that we can allow for third-party integration into the system. As you can see, we have any kind of sensor that will be submitted and connected to any of the hardware. We consider any of the hardware that adds to this, we would call a node. That node will allow us to get all the data information, whether it's ambient temperature, ceilometer. It could be any of the variables of data that's necessary for making a national airspace safe in terms of the environment, and the planning. And we were able to actually daisy chain the data. So raw weather can be data exchanged between landing pads, mailbox landing pads, smart mailbox landing pads. And you can virtually, as the system grows for delivery, you can actually take this data and start daisy chaining the information and using it for weather planning and validation of the actual data itself through blockchain. So the blockchain will actually take the data, mine it, validate it, log it, and record it. So in terms of participation, it's designed to be able to do anything from the vertiports of eVertiports, the pads on top of rooftops, or just the simple landing pads for the mailboxes in front of a home. As you can see, the raw weather data exchange can be done directly between participating smart delivery drones and or service drones via the sensor data daisy chaining. So this allows a more of an intelligent, robust data exchange between all different markets. You can then see how the weather data now exchanges between the drones and between the smart mailbox landing pads. So what you're seeing is a network of nodes that are all hardware related, but they're communicating with each other and telling in real time and in near real time what exactly the information they're seeing. If they see adverse IMC weather, or if they see VFR weather, and exactly ahead of time what is going to be planned. So this information will be shared amongst each other through the AIML. Here you can see how it starts to layer. You might have a drone hangar, and this can be both vertiport and for eVTOL and for drones itself. Doesn't matter what the hardware is or which third-party application hardware it is that actually interacts with this and is a part of it. So the raw weather data exchange can be done directly between the participating smart delivery drones, service drones, smart mailbox landing pads, charging stations via the sensor data chain, and they're all communicating. This also participation includes the VTOLs, the eVTOLs, the UGVS will receive the data weather exchange upon the mission critical regulation requirements. So whatever the requirements are based on the NAS, the national airspace requirements, the restrictions, or any kind of reporting, this data can be modeled into that purpose. And as you can see, it starts to actually all become a mesh network of communication through the nodes where real-time data is exchanged in almost near real-time value. And so that data can now allow for drones, for VTOLs, for anything that's going autonomous. It will allow for that product to actually not have to be grounded simply because of an IMC issue. If the IMC issue becomes, not conducive for flight, then the reporting can deploy something else in the similar nature. So if you have a VTOL that's sitting close by and you have the smart rooftop and ground landing pads, you can easily say, well, we're not going to ground the actual flight. We're going to use a different waypoint based upon the meteorology information that we just received that is conducive for flight from waypoint to waypoint with this equipment, with this particular hardware, and we're going to go ahead and get from A to B without having to ground the vehicle. So what this is blockchain AMI and situational awareness, which equals enhanced blockchain AIML beyond visual line of sight situational awareness. As an open platform that is interoperable, scalable, and modular, third-party manufacturers and developers can participate with their autonomous and hybrid autonomous aircraft, as well as the ground autonomous vehicles for the UGVs. The sensors, the UTM services, they all can integrate into the smart Vertiport-in-a-Box solution using the blockchain validation, logging, and cybersecurity feature. So this allows for enhanced blockchain BVLOS situational awareness based on NAS restrictions and requirements. So this is scalable and modular based on the requirements as things move along, such as remote ID, performance-based data, and end user concepts of operation, just to name a few. So third-party applications will help drive through situational awareness into safety zones that we've never been able to achieve, because we're not isolating ourselves into one company saying, look, we are Solvol. There are several companies out there that have incredible technology, and we wanted to make sure that when we created this infrastructure, that their participation in this would allow for enhancing the safety of NAS through situational awareness and securing that with cybersecurity through blockchain. So the blockchain mining, ledgering, logging, and data recording, that can be retrieved in near real-time data as raw data. It's validated, and it's digital blockchain situational awareness that can be turned into a black box in a digital form and can be recoverable in cloud. It can be recoverable on actual edge computing, so it can be on the hardware itself. The remote ID with all the participating and authorized nodes can be on any of the hardware. And so no matter what hardware or software is participating, we are looking at this and saying the future of remote ID is important, not just for the VTOL or the drone, but it's also important for the actual participating hardwares, whether it's meteorology equipment, sensors, landing pads. They should all be nodes that are identified on a grid as a remote ID. And this way it creates a cybersecurity enhancement through the blockchain smart Vertiport-in-a-Box infrastructure solution. The daisy chaining of weather data from planning to landing allows for the enhanced VFR and IMC situational awareness. So the more third-party participation we get, the more sensors we receive, the safer that we believe this will make the system integrate. And this paves the way for node-centric networking of self-healing aviation and ground-critical mission BVLOS through a combined participation of third-party technologies on an open platform environment. Blockchain is going to be working with the 5G, the edge computing, cloud networking. It needs to be scalable, modular, interoperable. An open platform allows for current comms such as 4G Lite, 5G integration, but prepares for the evolution of the faster networks and processing as they develop. So the actual system is scalable. We're working right now with True Weather and modeling in their modeling systems that will allow for us to give the raw data through our system, and we're trying to come up with a solution together on their modeling with our raw data, and to allow the integration of all these sensors to work together. And that will allow for a safer autonomous NAS and ground-based weather environment. So when you take the data quality, the data mining, the data validation, the data logging, data backup, data certification standards, and you create a trusted mission critical performance rated raw data source, that's where True Weather will be able to take that and model it into a useful specific use case for operations based on the exact needs. DISC, which is Drone Industry Systems Corp, will intake this raw data while creating the blockchain validation and hyper ledgering the system, which needs to be identified into raw data to be bifurcated and disseminated into near real-time retrievable information that can be monetized into a weather model by True Weather for each specific use case. Blockchain allows for the data mining, the data validation, the data logging, ledgering, recording, the data certification, the data chain of custody, the memorialization of events. It creates a trust in an untrusted ecosystem and allows for cyber protection to be built in. It allows for an economic monetization and a sustainability model as third parties participate, and it grows into a more safer environment. So the Vertiport-in-a-Box autonomous ecosystem is designed for both air and ground with third-party participation. As you can see, this is a model of a strip mall that has different use cases. You might have a hangar for the drone. You might have a landing pad for the VTOL. You will have meteorology equipment on the top of the roof, landing pads on the ground. So you will even have UGVs, unmanned ground vehicles that are parked there getting charged. So one of the things we need to address is security is an issue as data creates security risk, and exposure must be identified and mitigated. DISC's blockchain nodes and AIML Solutions allow for the validation and performance certification of raw data while providing a cyber protection of data necessary to protect critical mission information during the transfer of storage of information and operations. Standard operational protocols, procedures, and validations must be adopted to participating sensing partners through the DISC and regulatory bodies, onboarding procedures of existing APIs, SDKs, and firmware operations for data information retrieval and dissemination while providing the cybersecurity necessary to protect against cyber attacks and bad actors. We're actually able to do a full stack cybersecurity protection. We will take the onboarding of an API SDK, and we will take that in and make sure that we blockchain it and are able to validate the data. And that's Drone Industry Systems. Thank you for your participation and listening to our presentation.
Great stuff. Thanks so much for your presentation, Mike. Really good to hear all the work that you and your company are doing as well. We've got one question, and I'm conscious that we're sort of coming towards the final aspect of our virtual networking event today as well. And again, it's a question from Gary Vermack, and he said, are you providing the hardware or collecting data from the vertiports and airport and drone pad owners?
So as we have participating, the goal here is to bring in participating manufacturers, sensor companies, and all where that are already existing, that already have their own manufacturing, their own software operations, because we believe that this will stifle the industry if we try to monopolize one category rather than introduce every third party's capabilities to further enhance it. What we're doing is we're speeding up the process of success for an industry rather than slowing it down and not allowing anybody to put in their value add to bring a safer national airspace. And that's what this is about. You know, the success of this industry is safety, you know, and so with that in mind, data needs to be able to be available from every source that makes national airspace safer. I hope I answered that question.
No, perfect. No, thank you very much for that, Mike. And as I said with previous to Sergio's presentation, Mike will be around. So if you have any other questions, please, he'll be able to answer any should you have them as well. But Mike, for now, thank you ever so much. And thank you everyone for your attention for these two as well. We're going to go back now into the floor where we can continue the networking. We've got just over 20 minutes left as well. So thank you, Mike and Sergio, as always. And we'll go back into the networking session for the last 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Bye-bye.